Hey everyone, welcome back to Teal Death Do Us Part. We're on episode number 2. I'm Allie Teal.
I'm Stephen Teal.
Yep, that's him. We're married. We're an interabled couple, and that's kind of what this podcast circles around. Last week was an introduction. We talked about a variety of different things, and this week we're going to be talking about some stereotypes and common misconceptions that we've experienced. Maybe we've thought them ourselves, or they're just general stereotypes and misconceptions about disabilities in general. But we're going to be debunking them. But if you have ever experienced some stereotypes or any misconceptions about you, if you're a disabled person or in a relationship like ours, let us know in the comments. What stereotypes have you faced? What misconceptions have you faced? Or maybe you have some that you learned were wrong, just that kind of thing. We want to hear from you. We want to interact with you guys. So let us know below. So the first, I think, stereotype or misconception that we can talk about is that disabled people are no fun or can't do fun and wild things. So is that true, Stephen?
Is it true that I don't do those things? Or
Is it? I mean, he's a little boring sometimes, but that's his personality. It has nothing to do with his disability.
I wouldn't say I'm boring, but I like time to myself. I think it is a huge misconception that we're not fun.
Yeah.
And not in the sense that we don't have good personalities.
I mean like physically fun things.
Yeah,
I think you think of someone disabled and you think, wow, they can't do the fun stuff that I like to do.
Yeah. I think it does lead to that where people think, well, I have to give up things that I like to do.
Yep.
When in reality, I like to support you in what you like to do. Even if you don't want to do it.
That's true.
I would be like, well, you can go without me. It's fine.
Right.
I do that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, there are things that I do without you. Not a ton of things. For example, for us, the beach is hard with Steven because he's in a wheelchair. Now there are workarounds. There are beach wheelchairs that are made of like plastic piping and have these big, huge, like all-terrain tires. And those are really cool. But even that's a little difficult sometimes. And he knows that I like to go to the beach and relax and not worry about anything. And so he's cool if I just go to the beach by myself, like with friends. But it's also fine if we go together and I push him in one of those special chairs when we go with our kids. But yeah, so that's just something we learned.
Yeah, I have things that I like to do that you can do with me, though.
Oh, for sure.
Anyone that knows me knows that I love like music.
Mm-hmm.
Metal music's my thing. So we go to shows together.
We do.
Even if there's a workaround, we can find a way to get around with the wheelchair.
Yeah.
I mean, we had our first real experience with that.
Yeah.
In March.
And I have to say, I liked it better with you in the wheelchair because we would go before he was in the wheelchair. So like we said before, the wheelchair is fairly new. I would say maybe you've been in the wheelchair for about 6 months now. I would say full time, like where you're in it all day long. Before then, he would use a wheelchair if he was just having a really bad day, or like if we went to a theme park, he would be in a wheelchair. But normally he would walk around, but he wasn't stable. He was very easy to knock over. So going to a metal show where people are going to be, can I say violently dancing? Is that an appropriate description? Aggressively dancing?
Yeah.
People knock into each other. And I was always so anxious and like tense. And I enjoyed being there with him, but I almost didn't get to enjoy the show so much because I was worried about people knocking into him and knocking him down or blocking him or him having a hard time getting up and down the steps. And so now with you in the wheelchair, it was just like easy. Like we just hung out there. We were able to find a spot near the stage so you could see. But if people bumped into your chair, it was fine. Like I didn't have to watch you and worry the whole time. I could enjoy the music too. And you really did seem to enjoy it more. Like you were more relaxed. You got into the music more. You could even dance some because you weren't worried about knocking yourself off balance, which was really cool. And of course, there are things like depending on where you're at, the venue is going to limit you. But that's kind of anywhere. But we were still very much able to enjoy it and have fun. And no one that was there was bothered. And people were pretty generally respectful of you being in the chair. So definitely that's a fun thing we do together. We're able to go to theme parks together, which is something I worried about. I love Disney very much. And going to places like Universal or Busch Gardens, I worried that you would have a hard time and it would hurt you to walk around. Or even in a wheelchair, I worried you wouldn't have fun in a wheelchair. So it wasn't about me having fun. I was just worried it would be boring for you. And then that would, I guess, make it not fun for me. But you enjoy that, right? Like when we go?
Yeah, I mean, theme parks have done a better job of adjusting to handicapped people than probably anywhere else in the country, honestly.
Yeah. And the customer service, and that, what do you call that? the hospitality facilities and the employees there that specialize in hospitality at Disney and Universal, they're on top of it. Like if you have a question about, hey, where's the nearest handicapped bathroom? Is there a ramp nearby? They know which rides are easy for him to transfer in and out of. Like they know which ones are going to be more difficult because they move faster, have a moving pad or whatever. But they're very helpful and also very patient. Like, of course, you're going to have people like other park goers who they may not be patient. They may not be from here, so they may not understand what you're trying to tell them when you say, hey, can you excuse us? We're in a wheelchair. So you just have to have grace for other people at a theme park or any big place like that. But as far as the employees of Disney and Universal and places like that, they have literally stopped a ride for us so that he could get on. And so, yes, that may inconvenience someone for 2 seconds, but they wanted to make sure that Steven had a good time and he was able to get on the Little Mermaid ride with his kids and enjoy it and be part of it. So I thought that was really cool. And I appreciate that. Like you said, they are really doing a good job compared to a lot of other places. But that's something that I didn't think we would be able to do and enjoy as much as we have. But we love going to Disney together. We just went to Star Wars Land and it was amazing.
Yeah, Galaxy's Edge was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But like as we're talking about, it's yes, you have to find a way to do things differently, but that doesn't take away any of the experience because that's a minor inconvenience to suffer if I still get to have fun.
I agree.
You know.
And one thing I wrote down on this, a little note, was that I think it just worked out perfectly for us. And I believe that it can work out for you and for other people listening and watching. So obviously he's in a wheelchair. And even before then, he wasn't going to be able to go hiking or mountain biking or, camping on the ground. Like that would be really difficult now. But he happened to end up with a wife who doesn't want to do any of those things. Like I genuinely, even before him, I don't care about camping. I don't care about mountain biking, whatever. It worked out that the things I'm interested in generally are things he's able to do. And I think that was just God's plan and it all worked out. And so I think it's important, especially if you're upfront when you're dating, you'll find someone who's interested in things you can do. And then it's not going to be an issue anyway. Because you're not going to have the issue of, well, I like to do this and he can't do it with me or she can't do it with me. So we're just not going to have time together. But you find your person and you're going to have similar interests. You're going to be able to do the same stuff. And it doesn't always have to be a sacrifice. Sometimes it's easy. So I think for us, it is generally easy most of the time because we like the same stuff, nerdy movies, music, so that works out. So another one we wrote down, was that disabled people can't have real love and real relationships.
Yeah, that's a big one, I think. And I don't blame most people because I think they assume different means it's hard, which means you can't possibly have an easy relationship. Right. And that's unfortunate because I'd say it made our relationship a lot stronger.
Yeah, for sure.
We were kind of forced to get a lot closer than we expected to a lot sooner. I had to be real with you because it affected our future.
Yes.
I didn't want to marry you and then you find out, oh my God, this is not what I signed up for.
Right. I agree.
Now I still have the same, we still argue, we still fight. I mean, we have those things that most couples do.
That's what makes it a real relationship, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's authentic. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we've ever had a fight that really was because of my disability. I don't think you ever have been mad at me because...
No, definitely not.
I think that would, that would just be stupid. I don't know. I don't know why that's a misconception, but it is.
I think it's a misconception for able-bodied people thinking that looking at a relationship and saying, well, how could she be attracted to him with a physical deformation or with a handicap or, how could she really love him when he's not their version of attractive or normal looking? That's a big thing. And I'm going to reference them a lot in this video or episode because they fit a lot of these. But if you've never heard of Hannah and Shane, their channel is Squirmy and Grubs on YouTube. He has spinal bifida, right?
He has SMA.
Oh, I think it's spinal bifida though, right?
I have no idea. I don't know. I think it's SMA.
But he's in a chair and he's a small person. He's got a small build and he just doesn't have normal, like muscle function, basically, from what I understand from their videos.
Yes.
I'm not an expert in them. I'm like, whatever.
He has SMA, spinal
It's
muscular atrophy.
Atrophy, not spinal bifida. So SMA, like Steven said. But Shane doesn't look everyone's quote unquote normal standard of what a
Yes.
guy should look like, because he's not some big, beefy, muscular dude. He's in a wheelchair, and it's a motorized wheelchair. And then Hannah's what I would consider like your stereotypical attractive girl, and she adores Shane, and they're like the most precious and wonderful couple like ever. But they get a lot of questions and assumptions that she must be with him for money, or she must be with him for some other reason. But they assume that she can't possibly love him the way he is, whether it's because the people looking on can't imagine that she would find him physically attractive, or that, like we were talking about, she can't like him because he can't do normal stuff. They get a lot of hate for that. And I think that's because he looks more obviously physically disabled. You still kind of blend in, like you look a little bit, you can't necessarily tell something is wrong with you other than the chair.
The one thing, yeah.
For sure. You don't have tremors, you don't have anything like that. But even still, even with you looking like a quote unquote normal person, which I don't like that, but I know that that's what people think. Like that's the language that most people use. Even then, so even though Steven physically has a quote unquote normal body, like looking at him, we still get looks. We still get stares and the looks of, is she with him? Like, it's weird.
Yeah, like we had that instance at the 21 Pilots concert.
Yes.
Where they thought you were like I guess my caretaker.
They did.
They was just taking me on like a special adventure.
Yep. They thought you were also mentally handicapped and that I was taking care of you and taking you on a special outing. And they spoke down to him a little bit. They didn't mean to. Yeah. They just assumed they needed to. They spoke to you a little bit like a child. And that's a common thing that we can talk about too, is that people assume because someone looks obviously physically disabled, they also assume that they're mentally disabled. And that's also something that Shane and Hannah have talked about openly on their channel, is that they will go to the table at a restaurant and a waitress will come up to the table and take their order. And instead of asking Shane, hey, what do you want to eat? They assume that he can't answer for himself. And so they ask Hannah, well, what would he like? And Shane will be like, I want this. And people are so surprised that he gives a normal answer. And I don't know if they deal with that all the time or necessarily deal with that anymore, but they definitely talked about that a lot in their early videos. And that was the first time, though, at the 21 Pilots concert that we experienced that. And I didn't argue with people. I didn't correct them. There was no need to. I just said, oh, thank you. I also didn't complain because they were helping us and we were getting a little bit of special treatment because they were letting us through the line really quickly because they thought that he needed it. So I wasn't complaining. But it is not fun for people to just assume that I'm your carer, that I can't be in a relationship with you, or that I can't, be attracted to you because you have a disability.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that you just kind of feel sorry for me.
Right. Yeah.
And honestly, I've heard it a lot of my life, like, oh, come on, don't you want to be with a real man? Like that kind of stuff. I've heard that kind of stuff about tons of people with disabilities. Mm-hmm. And if you're a guy saying that, stop being an just don't do that. It's not okay. Like, just don't do that. Okay. I know that's a little harsh, but like, you can't say that to someone when you don't know. You just can't assume that their partner is just with them because they pity them. Right. Because that's just not how most people are. Most people are good. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
That's true. So with that, sorry, my brain. There's also I guess it's an assumption, a stereotype that if someone does first, like per se, have some sort of mental disability or just a mental difference, they assume that they can't have a relationship or want a relationship. Just like people assume that someone with a physical disability can't have a relationship, but that's just not true. I think every human being, whether you are on one end of the spectrum to the other, desires love and closeness and intimacy and relationship. And I think I knew that. I don't think I had the issue of thinking that someone with any kind of disability, mental, physical, whatever, I think I always knew that they would want a relationship. I didn't know it was necessarily possible. And that was naive of me, and it was a lack of exposure on my part. I never grew up with anyone who had Down syndrome or who was um, had some sort of maybe like a traumatic brain injury where they really didn't have a lot of mental function or something like that. So I just didn't learn about people who had different mental capacity. We should learn about that. That should be on TV more. There should be representation. And so one thing that opened my eyes to that was a show called Born This Way, which I believe came on TLC. I don't think it's on TV
It
anymore.
sounds like it'd be a TLC show for sure.
But it's called Born This Way, and it was about the normalization of Down syndrome. And it just followed these, I think I say kids, they were young adults around, and they were pursuing their dreams. One of them had a business. They were looking for jobs. They were seeking relationships and looking for love. And I think Down syndrome is more common than some other mental differences. And I just loved being able to watch and learn. I learned so much about Down syndrome through that. Um, but I also learned about society's view of disability in general and how society isn't set up to support people who are different. And they talked about that a lot in the show and the stereotypes they face. And so go find that show maybe on like, you can find,
Probably find some episodes on YouTube.
well, yeah, and sometimes on like Amazon TV and stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
the sites that keep old episodes of stuff. That was Born This Way. And again, that was about the normalization of Down syndrome. And then one that I believe is airing right now, I don't know if it's on Netflix or what, is Love on the Spectrum. And it's about autistic folks looking for love. And they also have other people with other diagnoses on there as well. But it's just, honestly, it's a really sweet show. And it just makes you appreciate the authenticity that the kids on that show have. And a lot of them, you know, part of being on the spectrum is typically not understanding social cues and then having like a lack of awareness of sarcasm and things like that. And so these kids go on dates and they're just so honest with each other, and there's not fakeness. There's not um trying to meet a social standard of what a date should be like. So if they're uncomfortable, they just say it. Or if they don't like the date, they just say it. And they like put it all out there pretty quickly. And I just love that. And I love seeing that. And I think it's inspiring to me, even though we're married, of like, why am I not just telling you exactly what I think and how I feel? That would just make it so much easier for you. Um, but I love that there are some shows now, whether they're perfect or not, whether they're perfect representation or not, they're at least trying to educate people and make
Yeah.
people aware that, hey, these people that you think are different, that you might think are dumb or make you uncomfortable because they're different, they actually want love and relationship, and it's possible. And it's beautiful when it happens because usually those relationships are more authentic. Like we've talked about, our relationship is by no means perfect. However, we do have a very vulnerable and authentic communication with each other that I certainly never had in any other relationship. And it's because your disability pushed us to that.
Yes.
And so I think that if you allow it to, a disability in a relationship can add beauty to a relationship.
Yeah. And part of my transparency with you comes from the fact that I was so ashamed of my disability for so long that when I finally accepted it, I was like, screw everybody else.
Right.
I don't know anybody else an explanation because it's just who I am. So why should I apologize for it? You know?
Absolutely.
And like you said about the shows, it's a shame that we even have to have those shows.
Yeah.
Like the purpose of them is to shed light on it. But you'd think in 2020, even though it was crappy of the years it's been, you'd think by now we would have come far enough to where there's no dogma surrounding disabilities. You know, you wouldn't think that we need to keep normalizing it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just been something that we've dealt with since
Forever.
mankind existed. Whenever that is, I don't know what everybody believes, but like, it's just crazy to think that there are still people out there that look down on people with disabilities, or they just don't consider them. Like it just, I don't know. I don't think I understand it, because even if I wasn't disabled, I think I would consider people like that.
Well, it's only been in the last century that we stopped sending every single disabled person to mental facilities or putting them in orphanages, things like that in America. Now, in other countries, I know that's still happening, and probably in America that does happen sometimes, and that's really unfortunate and sad. But when I say the last century, that means it's only 2 or 3 generations ago. So my grandparents are 2 generations back. Um, it's only been that long that disabled people are viewed as people and have rights and can participate in life, and that society gave a crap and put ramps places and started requiring things to be handicap accessible.
Yeah.
That happened in our
The
lifetime.
ADA happened in the 70s.
Right.
Not until the 1970s were buildings required
Right.
to have handicap accessible facilities.
Yeah. And that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy to think because that's only 40, 50 years ago.
That's not long ago.
That's 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's crazy
And
to
that
think
schools
that.
had to be inclusive and handicap accessible. Used to, if you had any kind of mental delay or disability, you just didn't go to school.
Yeah.
You were just home, which just makes things worse because then you're not even given a chance to grow and improve what you can do.
And that explains it. It kind of explains why the people are so dumb to it, I guess.
Yes.
Like society has just tried to suppress it for so long.
It's been such a slow change. For sure. So another thing we've said, there's a stereotype that you can't have a real relationship, that I can't possibly be in it because I love you. It has to be something else. There's also the stereotype that...
Or that you're only with me because you feel sorry for me.
Right. There's a stereotype that disabled people can't have children, or that if they do have children, they can't be a participating parent. Yeah. Did you think you would have kids?
I always wanted kids. I considered not having them. We've talked about that before.
Yeah. Sorry.
Got a personal grooming assistant. It's nice.
You had emo hair a little bit.
Look, I'm not ashamed of my emo times. Okay. I still rock it. It's fine. Taking Back Sunday, all that stuff. That's my stuff. Goodness. Anyway, people out there will understand. Uh-huh. But when we talked about this, I've considered not having kids with you because I thought, man, it's going to be too hard. I couldn't possibly, I don't know. I think it was more about living with it, living with the fact that, no, I can't run with my kids. I can't pick them up. That typical stuff.
Because that's what society taught you, right?
Well, it's partially that, and partially because I just wanted to spare my future family the pain of seeing me that way. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't want to make your kids' life difficult.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I'm not mad that I have kids. I mean, I have 3 beautiful children, and that's great. And we've talked about it. The wheelchair, I mean, as frustrating as it is sometimes, it's really brought some independence back, and I can do a little bit more with them. But I never thought if I do have kids, I'm not going to participate. I always knew it would be hard, but I never told myself that I wouldn't find a way to get it done. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, people definitely expressed that to me.
Yeah.
Whether family or friends or strangers have literally made comments to me before. Of how are you okay doing that by yourself, or are you doing that all by yourself, or are you sure you want to have another kid, a second child, when Steven can't help you? Isn't it hard enough having one? Our first child absolutely was a surprise. We weren't trying to get pregnant. So that was God making that decision for you. Yeah. But our second child was intentional and planned. And, well, as much I think as you can plan that. We have limited control, I believe, but you know what I mean. Like, what's going to happen?
We wanted to have another kid.
Yeah.
We chose to have another kid.
We weren't trying not to.
Yes.
And, but and people were like, really? You did that on purpose? Like, you made things harder for yourself. And of course, they don't see into our daily life. They don't see how you help. They don't see any of that. And then with our third kid, it was the same thing all over again. People are like, are you really another one? It aren't too hard enough for you. You're struggling. And,
it's
how
hard.
is he going to help you?
But it doesn't mean it's not worth it.
Well, my thing is the hard part, is just when they're very dependent. And right now, Josiah, our third child, is about to be 1 in a couple weeks. And so, sure, right now, he wants me to hold him all the time. He needs a lot of attention, a lot of hands-on assistance for things because he's learning how to be a human. But when I look now at our 4 and 6-year-old, they don't need much help with stuff. So they, could be with someone who can't get out of a chair or move because they know how to feed themselves. They can do, now you can. I'm just saying, like, they don't need a whole lot. So I think people forget how short a span of time it is that kids need that kind of physical help. And that's why it's not a big deal to me, even if you were more limited than you are, because you do so much, which we can talk about. Um, but even if you were more limited, I think that, if you're willing to stick it out for a few years, if you have a partner who really is not able to participate so much in the changing of diapers and carrying around and that kind of thing, um, I think that it's totally okay. If you are willing to do that, don't let anyone make you feel bad for that decision or tell you you shouldn't make that decision. Um, if you want to have kids with your spouse because you love them, you have kids as long as you can actually take care of them. You know what I mean? Like, don't be irresponsible, but if you're prepared to raise a child, raise a child. Parents, there are single parents. So if someone can do it by themselves, I can certainly do it with my handicapped husband.
And there's always ways to get around doing things the traditional way.
Absolutely.
Like, we can adapt. There's
Yeah.
plenty of things out there now that you can use to adapt. Like, they make so many things now to help with that.
Absolutely. And yes, you have to be creative, I think.
Mhm. And I think you also have to know your own situation.
Yes.
Like, for me, I know what I can and can't do. So
Mhm.
having a third child wasn't the scariest thing.
No.
Because I already knew what to expect, for one.
Yeah.
And two, I was in a wheelchair. So it was like, well, that's kind of easier. I don't have to worry about falling down with the baby.
Sure.
That
I
was a
agree.
big fear before.
Yes, it was. We were both afraid of him carrying Stella or Judah around, our first two children, when they were babies, when he was still walking, because he fell a lot. And so I was worried if he was holding them and fell, it would crush them or
Yes.
hurt them or whatever. And so he just didn't. He didn't carry them around. If he was standing, he didn't really hold them. And that sucked. That was really hard for him. Not even, it wasn't hard for me. I think that's the thing. It's not hard for the able-bodied person so much to do everything. It was hard for him emotionally because he wanted to hold the kids, and the kids would put their arms up and daddy hold me, and he would have to say no. Now, as soon as they could understand, they understood. They never held it against him. They never felt like they were lacking because all he had to do was sit down, and then they could crawl on top of him and he could hold them. Yeah. But that's the thing too, when it comes to kids, they extend a lot of grace naturally. They're very resilient. They don't typically hold grudges. I mean, genuinely, a 3-year-old is going to move on from stuff pretty quickly. And if it's all they know, like if you're disabled from the time they're born, then they're going to have an excellent, easy time. There's not going to be adjustment. This was just who their dad was. And this was fine for them because it's all they knew. And it's what they loved. And if you're someone who became disabled after you already had children, know that your kids will adjust faster than anyone else in your life, because kids are like rubber bands and sponges. They bend and adjust, and then they just absorb what's new. So
a good
just
resource.
don't be discouraged.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
you're
off.
Totally fine.
A good resource for that she's talking about, if you're a parent that's like recently disabled or became disabled after having your children, you probably have already adapted, but go check out the YouTube channel Wheels to Walking. It's Wheels with the number 2 and then
And
walking.
we'll link all of the stuff we're talking about.
Yeah, we'll link it in the description. But Richard, the guy that runs that channel, speaks with a friend who was injured after having kids.
Yep.
And he shows a lot of his adaptations of things, how he does it, how he plays with his kids. That's a good resource for you if you just need ideas or
just some encouragement. I think, to see that it's possible.
Yeah. That definitely helped me a little bit to see that. Even though I know I can do it, it still helped to see someone else that was doing it. So yeah. And
if you have questions, I'm not necessarily like parenting questions. We're not expert parents. I mean, we keep our kids alive, so we're pretty good at parenting. But if you have questions about how to parent, as a disabled person, or like if you need some help, I can't figure out an easy way to change my kid's diaper because I don't have, certain controls or whatever, we would be happy to talk about it. And if you have some specific questions like that too, leave that in the comments, or shoot us an email. What's our email?
Teal Death Do Us Podcast at gmail.com.
So you can, and we'll link that as well, or like put it in the description. But you can email us with questions. If you're struggling with something like that, just email us and we can talk about it, or we'll talk about it here on the podcast if we think the question is something that a lot of people would like to know. Yeah, we want to make sure we're representing our listeners. Another thing that I think people just don't give enough weight to is the way that Steven contributes emotionally, not only to mine and his relationship, but to our children. There is so much to be said about a dad who is present, not necessarily playing baseball or building Legos on the floor, but just him being in the room while they play or they watch a movie or someone they can come to and talk, he can read a book to them. He engages with them emotionally. He loves them. He tells them he loves them. That does so much for a kid. Um, and I think that it's better to have a loving, present parent who is disabled than no parent at all. And that's the situation for a lot of kids. Um, but I think love and support is far more important than the physical stuff anyway. Um, because I know of people personally, my friends, who had a parent who did the physical things. They would go to baseball games, they would play together, they would do stuff, but that parent wasn't emotionally available for them, and that did more damage. So, and that's something I have to remind him because he does get discouraged. He's a person, and he's a very sensitive person. Um, but I have to
Again,
remind
emo.
him, I have to remind him that our kids have a very, I would say, healthy understanding of their feelings because they have an emotionally available father. I think that's so
I
important.
can't
It,
speak for them, but yes.
I think it is. I mean, think about like daddy issues are such a common thing because fathers don't know how to always engage and get personal with their children. And you do that. You're kind and you have that ability to be sensitive with them. And it's also taught our kids by default, they're accepting of just anyone. It doesn't matter what they look like. It doesn't matter if they're handicapped or not, because they grew up with a dad who's different. So they just assume anyone who's different is great like their dad. They don't know any different. And so if you're disabled and you have kids, know that they're going to be awesome and like tolerant and open and accepting because that's something that they have immediately had to be. Um, they're going to be adaptive because our kids are adaptive. They're excellent little helpers and they like to help him. They ask to help him. Um, so if you spin it the right way and use it, it develops some really cool traits in your kids that you may have to, like it provides opportunities, I guess is what I'm saying, to build those characteristics in your kids. Whereas other situations, you may have to look for those opportunities. But for us, they're just everyday situations.
Yeah, and I think part of the thing you said about dads being present is partially like because of my disability, but like I think that's an issue that is easy to see because I'm disabled. So I like you look for that in me a little more. Like you can see that easier because you don't always see the physical stuff. Does that make sense? Like you're gonna see my emotional side more because I can't do a lot of the physical stuff.
Sure.
But I also think that that's something that's wrong with our society because
Oh, for sure.
men are told you have to be strong and masculine, and if you're not lifting weight around the house, you're not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if I could do anything just to not encourage disabled people, but any men, like they're listening, period, like you don't have to worry about what society says about that because being a man doesn't mean muscles.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean, flexing your muscles and not flexing your brain. Like that's literally not true. Like your worth as a man is how you treat people, not how strong you are.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, just food for thought.
That's right. So kind of going off of having kids. So we're going to get real with taboo. Sorry, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa.
I'm not sorry.
I am sorry. Plug your ears or fast forward. Obviously we have children. We have 3, which means we.
I think you're looking for the word have sex.
Yes. We've clearly had sex before. We still have sex. But that is a common misconception is that disabled people either can't have sex or they're not going to have good normal sex. That was something that we dealt with in the beginning of our relationship. We had friends say really crass things. And I get asked a lot, way more than you probably would imagine. And sometimes it's from my close friends. And I don't mind that because we have that kind of relationship. But from people that I'm just getting to know, they will ask things like, so like, do you guys do it? Can he have normal sex? Like, is it good? Is he good in bed? Does his stuff work? And I'm a very I'm sarcastic, but also if you're going to go there, then I'm going to go there. And so I'll respond with something like, "Oh yeah, it does." Like very like almost making a joke out of it, but like, "You want to know? Well, let me tell you." Because it's it's absurd that people ask that because, again, I'm not going to ask that in any other relationship. We said that last episode. Like, the questions that we get asked as an interabled couple are questions that abled couples don't ask each other. I'm not going to go up to my friend and be like, so, is your boyfriend good in the sack? Maybe you would. Maybe some people say that.
It depends on how close you are.
But
That's
I'm
obviously
not going
something you
to,
talk about
I
with
think,
close friends.
right. And I think the difference is I'm not just going to go up to them and assume that their partner cannot have sex. And I'm not
Yeah.
going to ask them, can they? Are they good? Are you miserable? Do you wish you had something else? Like, that's so personal and private. And so, yeah, we're talking about it here, but like, just know that most disabled people, I would say like majority of disabled people can still have a sexual relationship. Is it going to look like everyone else's?
No, of course
Is
not.
he going to be able to flip me upside down and do whatever? No. And that's fine. That's not what intimacy is. While those things may be fun and that may be what, you know, helps you to get yours, whatever. But like, intimacy is more than the wild, crazy stuff you see in the movies or whatever. But for us, yes, we have sex. It's good sex. I like it. We're going to keep doing it. Again, sorry,
Well, I hope so.
family.
I was hoping you wouldn't drop that on the podcast. Be like, guess what, Steven? No more love for you.
Right. But I think there's lots of questions about like how does it work? What do you do? People look at other couples like Shane and Hannah that I've referenced. They get all kinds of comments like that on their YouTube videos. How does it work? If he can't move his muscles, how can he do anything? You know, and it's just crazy to me because one, the human body is amazing and fascinating and can do really cool things, regardless if you're disabled or not. Like, the body's resilient, and we don't even know everything about the human body. So like, don't assume that someone can't do stuff.
Yeah. Also, sex education fact for everyone. If you have a muscle disease and you have a penis, your penis isn't a muscle, so most likely it works.
I just looked this up so that I would have the correct information. It's mostly cartilage, and what makes a penis erect is actually
blood flow.
Two distinct blood vessels that fill with blood, and that's what gives you an erection. And it's not a muscle thing. So, and I think that let that encourage you if you were wondering or concerned.
And even if you have a hard time getting an erection, again, there are people out there that are paraplegic, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
They have a hard time. Spinal cord injuries can make it hard too. However, they make assistive things to make it so that they can still enjoy sex.
Mm-hmm.
So there are plenty of ways for people to still be intimate.
And I think there's no shame in that. If you need assistance to perform in any way, whether that's medication, using assistance, like the assistance tools or whatever, I don't know what they call them. But if you need that stuff, there's no shame in it.
And if you're with the right person, they won't mind.
Absolutely. And I think that is also, it's my responsibility as the abled person to educate myself, to know kind of, and if you don't know what to expect, ask your partner, ask him a question, ask her a question. And you don't have to be weird about it, but like, if you know your relationship is moving that direction, it's okay to say, hey, so like, can you have sex? Have you had sex before? Was it difficult? Is it awkward? What do I need to know going into this? A concern for me, sorry if it's TMI, I didn't want to hurt him or do something that was going to make him feel uncomfortable. Like, I didn't want to just assume and move in a certain way that he wouldn't be able to move in, and then it would make him feel bad for not being able to participate in a certain way. And so I asked questions. I said, hey, can you do this? Can I do this? Can we, is it going to hurt you if I'm, move my body this way? Or, you know what I mean? Like, I know that's really personal, but like, I think it's important to have that communication with each other. One, so that you don't hurt yourself.
Yes.
But two, just know that it's going to be awkward, and talking eliminates some of that awkwardness. Now, it's still awkward sometimes. Not that like he's awkward or I'm awkward, but growing up, I know that in the movies, and these weren't even inappropriate. Well, I guess they were inappropriate if they had sex scenes, but they were like normal movies that just had like a quick sex scene or like implied that they were having sex. There are these hot moments where they're moving around and it's fast and it's smooth and it's, a certain way, like where there's no awkward pauses. There's no, hold on, let me move my leg. Hold on, let me do this. But sometimes that happens because he does move slower and he does move differently. And so sometimes it's like, oh, great, we're having fun. Okay, stop a second, let me move. Okay, stop a second, let me adjust. And because I love him, that doesn't bother me. And because I'm genuinely attracted to him for the right reasons and in a genuine, authentic way, it doesn't take away from the heat of the moment. I'm still attracted to him, even if he has to take a pause or even if things don't work out. Like if he's having a really hard day and he's tired and I know that his body is having a hard time, and I want to have sex, I'm just not going to worry about it. I don't mind saying, you know what, we can wait. I'm not going to push you. I'm not going to push your body too hard. I mean, of course, in any relationship, you want to have that kind of respect for each other where you can read the other person and know if they're not in the mood or even if they are. Um, but it's also okay to say, hey, are you having a hard day? Like, would it be too much to have sex or whatever? And sometimes he'll say yes. And sometimes he's like, nope, let's do it anyway. And that's fine. But these are things you have to talk about and it's okay to talk about. And I know too, sometimes certain disabilities and diseases can affect your sex drive, right?
I'm
And
sure anything could affect your libido. Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's important to talk about that too. So if you know that your disability affects that, communicate that to your partner because that eliminates questions on their end. So
Yes.
he doesn't have that issue. It doesn't affect him hormonally or really affects his libido like in a way that's related.
No, I'm like a teenager. It's
Yeah,
okay. You
it's
can say
fine.
that. That's okay. You can say that.
But I know that if for some reason I'm the kind of person, and I guess I have the kind of issues or insecurities, where if it did affect your libido, I know that that would make me insecure. I know that I would wonder, is it me? Is he just not attracted
And
to
you've
me?
had those moments. It's
I
okay to say
have.
that. And I've had to real quick to be like, oh God, no, that's not it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Please don't think
Yeah.
you're not attractive. Yeah.
Yeah, because absolutely there are times where your body doesn't necessarily cooperate like we want it to.
It's a jerk. It's a jerk sometimes.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, disabilities can be a little bit unpredictable. Things may run smoothly one day and then suddenly you have difficulty with it another day and then you're fine again. And that's not just with bedroom stuff. That's anything. Yeah. Some days his legs might do a certain thing and the other day he can't move his leg at all. Like you just kind of never know what you're going to get. But yeah, so it can make the other person feel like it's personal, which is why it's important to communicate, like he said, and say, no, this is not about you. This just comes with the disability or this comes with whatever. And then, I mean, gosh, I'm going to say that word 100 times. Communicate, talk about it. Like if you know that your sex drive is an issue, then talk about it with your partner. And it's also, there's no shame in that either. And if you need help with that, medicine for it, you can talk to a counselor about it to find out what solutions are out there. But yeah, I think it's okay to talk about. It's okay to get help for. And it's a normal thing for it to be awkward. And I think even abled couples probably have awkward moments in the bedroom because our bodies do weird things too. If you burp or pass gas or whatever, things happen, especially if you're together for a long time, you're going to, have weird moments. I think we just kind of
had the weird. You're a liar.
That's true. I think we just had the weird moments sooner.
Well, I don't think that they were weird moments. It was just they were just really real.
Yeah.
Like they were just real moments. Mm-hmm. Like you had to have real conversations a lot faster than most couples.
Yeah.
But like at the end there, I didn't care about having sex with you all the time.
No.
I don't want that to come out the wrong way. But like,
no, that's how it should be.
Yeah, but I know that. But I'm saying I don't want you to think that. Oh, I don't think about you all the time like that because that's not true. But like at the end of the day, that's not something that really matters to me as much as it is being intimate with you in the ways that are more real. Like sex is super intimate, right. But like the intimate moments happen outside of sex too.
But intimacy isn't only sex, is what you're saying.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Sorry, I'm bad about that sometimes.
No, I totally agree with that. I think that it's important to be intimate and close in other ways, regardless of what kind of relationship you're in.
Because if you do that, those moments in the bedroom will not even bother you anymore.
That's absolutely right.
Because like, what could be more awkward than, like we talked about last week, helping someone in the bathroom? Mm-hmm. What is more awkward and intimate than that?
Absolutely.
Like going to have sex after that is nothing.
Yeah, because that's real life, okay? So having to help someone in the bathroom and then 5 minutes later, you're in bed together and then that's where sex happens and you were just wiping their butt. And that might seem weird because it is weird. But and it might seem like, well, how could you ever do that? How could that be normal? Yeah. But it becomes normal. And like he said, it's intimacy, it's closeness, it's trust, it's...
I think that's it. I think trust is the word that I'm looking for the most. It's like, I trust you to do a lot of things for me. So like in bed, it's like even more heightened, I guess.
Right. And that's
Like that's
that's
why
the
we
thing
communicate
too. If
better.
you're having a healthy sexual relationship, like what sex is really supposed to be, um, and that's, I mean, that's, I guess that's up to discretion. That depends on what you believe and your moral, how you view that. Um, not shaming or judging. I'm just saying I know everyone has a different perspective
Yeah, sure. We're all
on
human. Yeah.
that. But a sexual relationship that is healthy is consensual, it's trusting, it's respectful. Um, it's got at least a little bit of intimacy and closeness in it, and that's how it should be.
And
And
communicating each other's needs.
yes,
That's
and
literally,
respecting each other's needs
yeah,
or respecting each other's
boundaries.
boundaries. Thank you. Um, and so that's something we just had to actually verbalize and establish in that way. Um,
It does suck to know that people ask you those things because they don't ever ask me because I think they know better.
mhm.
That's something that it's not something you should ever ask the disabled person,
Mm.
but I don't think you should ever ask the able-bodied spouse either
No,
because honestly, it's one, none of your business.
right.
Two, who cares? That's not what every relationship's about. Allie's not with me just to have sex with me.
No,
That's literally, I think that's why that question bothers me is because it's implicative of your feelings for me are only you can't possibly be with him and not have sex with him. Like
right.
that's their thought process is
Because
that
for a lot of people,
their
that is
first
super
question is
important.
about sex. Their
Right.
not question is not what's wrong with Steven? Tell me what happened.
Well, it
Like,
usually is.
yeah, but I mean like what is their
That's not
immediate
more
next
important for them,
question?
though. Yeah.
Like, well, can he have sex with you? Like, who cares?
Right.
I married him because I love him, not because of what I want from him.
Right.
So
I
I don't
agree.
know.
I think it doesn't bother me when people ask me. Like if my friends ask me, that's honestly
It
fine.
depends on the person for me.
But it's when strangers ask
Yeah,
me
strangers
or
need to
people
stop
that
doing
I'm not
that.
close with. It's when people like that ask me. I think friends, I think that is a thing friends talk about of
Sure.
was the sex good? That's a
But
thing
that's fine.
people say, but it's your intention, and I can
Yes.
tell when you have a tone of like, "Oh my god, like I can't believe," or assuming that you're bad in bed is offensive. I think it offends me, and of course it offends you. Um, because it's just assuming that you're not normal.
Yeah.
But here's the thing though, even if someone is not normal, even if they're not great in bed, that doesn't mean they can't have a real relationship and still be loved and valued, and someone can still be attracted to them.
Anyone can be attracted to anyone because it's not about looks. I mean,
Right.
anyway, that's just another tangent. The last thing I want to say is to that anyone who's disabled, if you're watching this, just understand that you're not different because of what's wrong with you. Like you may look different to everybody else, but you're not
Mhm.
different. And like, don't worry about what other people think about your sex stuff. Like
Yeah.
you can have sex. There's a way for everyone to be able to be intimate with their mate. Don't let anyone else tell you that, and don't feel ashamed for your body because that's something I had to deal with.
Absolutely.
I definitely had to deal with that with thinking, oh well, there's plenty of other dudes out there that are stronger and more physically able to do the positions Allie might want to do in bed that I can't do, and I had to really quickly remember that no, she's willing to adapt things to make it work.
Absolutely.
So
And if you love someone, you will.
exactly. Just remember that. It's not hopeless.
also,
You're going to
if-
have a good sex life if you're with the person that like really
Absolutely.
loves you like that. So,
And I think you mentioned too, if you look different, if you don't have a stereotypically
yes, that's what I mean.
like what society calls attractive
Yes.
body, you are attractive to the person who loves you.
Exactly. That's all that matters.
And I know that's hard to understand because I think there are so many able-bodied people who we don't think we're attractive, and every single person on the planet has insecurities. That's just a fact. But don't be discouraged, and know that just because you see yourself a certain way doesn't mean your partner is going to see you that way. He struggles with worrying about what he looks like, about, all kinds of different things, whether they relate to his MD or not.
Uh-huh.
And I think that it's okay to need affirmation in that. And I think that on both ends, able-bodied person and disabled person in the relationship, encourage each other. Remind the other person that they're attractive to you. I flirt with him so much that I think he hates it. Like I just
You're just embarrassing about it
I'm
sometimes.
embarrassing. I think he's hot, and I tell him whether that's in a public place or not. I don't care. I'm not like super inappropriate, just like mildly inappropriate. But he's my husband, and I'm attracted to him, and that's okay. So I'm gonna let you know that I think you hot stuff.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You're pretty good looking yourself.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to stop gushing over each other so you
Um,
guys don't get sick of it.
so the last thing that we can wrap up with, because I don't quite know where to go after talking about sex and probably grossing people out, is just that a misconception or stereotype or assumption, whatever you want to call it, that um, a disabled person has no hope. Maybe you're the disabled person and you think that for yourself, or you're a parent of a disabled person and you think that it's kind of hopeless for them, that they're not going to have friendships or relationships, or they're never going to get better.
I'll interject for a second, that they won't have normal relationships.
Right.
I think that's the important caveat to that.
Sure. You're right. But there is hope. There's always new medical advances. People are doing trials all the time on medications and like gene therapies, stem cell research, things like that. There's always alternative therapies. And sometimes you have to be creative and find ways to relieve pain or find accessibility, but there's always hope. And if you don't have a lot of hope right now, reach out to someone, reach out to us, and let people encourage you and know that there's hope for friendships, there's hope for relationships, there's always hope. Because there's always tomorrow, and tomorrow is going to be different, and tomorrow can always be better than today was.
That's why we created this.
Yes. And I don't ever want anyone to feel hopeless.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, we talked about this in our notes that I struggle with that.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you are religious. If you are, great. If you're not, that's great too. Who cares? Live your life. I don't care. We talked about how it makes me. There were plenty of times where I had no hope. I think I'm pretty much past that point.
I think you're way.
I think I'm more accepting of that. Like that's not true as much as I think it is.
Yes.
As much as my brain tries to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in God, but that it's not to say that my faith doesn't waver when, I'm like, okay, we believe in a God that can heal. So
we do
it. Like I pray for it, and I truly believe it's going to happen. And then it doesn't. It's hard not to have that shake your faith.
Yeah.
So if anyone, I think a lot of you who are disabled can probably agree with me on that.
Yeah, it's hard to find hope. It's hard to find.
You feel less than.
Mm-hmm.
That you're, I'm forgotten. God forgot about me. Yeah.
Right.
Like, why would he let me suffer? Like those are things that I really deal with.
Absolutely. It's things that I struggle with too. As someone in a relationship with him, I get frustrated. It has made me question things and have doubts sometimes. And know that I truly believe 100% that God has grace for that. I think God knows how he made us. He knows who we are, and he knows that this is hard, and he's compassionate and understanding. And I think that when I go to God and let him know, hey, I'm really frustrated because you haven't healed Stephen, and you promised me in your word that you would, I think God's, got patience for me. And maybe I'm not getting an answer, but I also know that that doesn't necessarily have to change who I think God is. And it doesn't change, like we said, that we have hope. We will always hope that Stephen gets healed. And we also know that our relationship can be used right here like it is right now. But we also know that Stephen can, be used, whether it's through ministry, whether it's through this kind of thing, whether it's through just relationships with people. He can go and do great things regardless of if he's disabled or not. That doesn't mean there's no hope for him. He can have goals and dreams and aspirations and ambitions. He can plan for the future. He can, want to do great things. And that's absolutely okay and possible, even though he's disabled.
Yeah, I've been through those phases. I've been through the things of having opportunities taken away from me that were what I wanted to do for a living. Right. I've gotten through those things. They sucked in the moment, but I never I had my kids there. I had you there. I had family there, friends.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the thing. As long as you have a community around you,
yes,
I think it'll be easier.
Yeah,
I think that's the important thing we're trying to say is that don't feel like there's no hope because there's always someone. Yeah. Like we exist for this reason.
Yep.
If we are the only outlet you have, comment, email us if it's private. That's fine. That's literally why we created this.
100%.
Like community is important.
Yeah. I think too, if you're the family of a disabled person, you can feel a little bit hopeless.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
they feel a lot of guilt, I think.
Yes, and that's really normal, and valid. And you're welcome to reach out to us too, in an episode coming up at some point. We want to talk to some of our family members. I want to talk to his parents, at least one of them, and his siblings. He's got 2 brothers, and I just want to talk to them about that because I know I'm interested to know their perspective. But I know that they can be encouraging for you guys too. So yeah, we went everywhere from having fun. Did you talk about my crowd surfing? Did you say that?
No, I didn't. I was going to talk about that in the beginning.
So in the very beginning, let us back up for a second. We talked
yeah.
about being able to have fun when you're disabled. He's got a friend named Mike, correct?
Mike, yeah, my friend Mike goes to concerts.
He's in a wheelchair.
He's in a wheelchair. He has spinal bifida.
That's spinal bifida.
That's probably where you're getting them mixed up.
Yeah.
But he's a really cool guy. He crowd surfs in his wheelchair.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
If you're interested, go look on YouTube. He's actually in a few videos. Just look up the band Under Oath and look up Las Vegas next to that and wheelchair crowd surf, whatever. Just put those 3 things together, and that's probably going to be Mike.
Yeah, it's really cool.
He's crowd surfed on stage with them like 3 times. So
yeah,
it's definitely something. Like, he's fearless because that scares the crap out of me. I think I told him, they told me to do it, and I said, I think I'll have to wear Depends the first time I do it. Because that's terrifying. Like, I'm terrified of someone dropping me. But yeah, that you can do things if you're comfortable with it. Like,
if you're willing to try.
He wanted to have fun, so he said, screw it, I'm doing it.
I love it.
And if someone in a wheelchair crowd surf, it doesn't make you feel a little more empowered, there's something wrong with you.
Absolutely.
So shout out Mike.
So yeah, so we talked about fun, crowd surfing and wheelchairs. We talked about sex, and then we got real at the end and got a little bit emotional. But
it's okay to cry.
We really appreciate you hanging out with us. We're gonna link Squirmy and Grubs. We'll link
Wheels to Walking.
Yep. We will link other resources that we have that we love.
Screw it. I'm gonna link a video of Mike in the description.
All right, Mike.
Watch that.
Put you on blast, man. But it's encouraging and fun to watch. But yeah, like I said, thanks for hanging out with us. We love talking to you guys. Thanks for listening to us talk about taboo real stuff. Thanks for supporting this podcast, this YouTube channel.
We didn't expect anyone to watch or listen.
It's incredible. We're so blessed and honored and grateful.
Yeah, I think we have like 30 subscribers at this moment
crazy.
On YouTube.
That doesn't seem like, it probably seems like a small number, but I think it's a huge number.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't have any expectation.
Yeah. We just want y'all to know that we're appreciative of anybody that's watched, because
it's really cool.
This is something we just took a chance on. Didn't know if we would like doing it or if people would like it. So we appreciate you.
Yeah. So like, share, comment, subscribe, whatever you do on whatever outlet you're listening to.
Yeah, we currently are on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. We have available on Spotify.
Yep.
We'll be available on Apple Podcasts probably at the end of the week.
Yay.
So you can check there. And just do all that fun stuff.
Yep. I think that's it. I can't think of anything else. Nothing too important to say.
Nope. I guess we'll just see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in to Till Death Do Us Part. We'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
Bye.